yeah, I'm willing to treat women this way. When you see a murdered naked woman in God of War 3 being used as a puzzle piece, and that's not mentioned, that's not a component of any of this discussion of the game, until that stops, that kind of game design stops, the community doesn't grow up. Until they're not marketed to themselves.
I actually want to add to the whole female gamers. Today, I was walking, I was actually walking and this guy stopped me and was asking me about my panel. I explained to him what it was about and he actually asked me, oh, are you a gamer? And I said, yeah. He was actually very shocked and my first reaction, I said, out of curiosity, why are you surprised that I am an actual gamer? He told me because I'm attractive and he doesn't expect a girl like me to play video games. So that kind of goes into a lot of, especially over Xbox Live, there's a lack of respect with female gamers in general. Obviously, you all heard the famous words, slut, you must be fat and ugly and this, as soon as you beat a guy. It's just we just have to be, this has been used a lot today, we have to be excellent to each other. And treat each other with respect.
We really do. I love this like impression of you like just wandering off the street into PAX.
I just hang out at convention centers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, this looks nice.
I'm a groupie, you know.
Yeah, no, it's tough. I would love to be able to go into an online space and feel comfortable all of the time. And a lot of times I don't, and it sucks. And nobody should have to feel like that because we all play together.
Right. There's been times where in the past on Xbox Live, if I would be playing Halo,
security. I've always wanted to say that.
Well,
all right, yes. Take them out.
Well, are we saying like legit trolls or metaphorically? I've seen some swords here today. For real.
Thanks for coming. Later.
More work.
the thing.
Sorry about that guy. He's gone, right? Good. All right. Well, figured that out. I was trying to collect what I was. Oh yeah. I mean, I actually put "I'm a girl" idiots in my gamer tag because my gamer tag is pretty gender neutral, and I get called horrible things just from the sight of people seeing my gamer tag. It's Princess Cowboy, and that upsets a lot of people. I even took the time to write, shouldn't it be Princess Cowgirl and not Princess Cowboy in my bio in hopes that people would just stop asking me that because they would look. So I hear it a lot, and it's horrible. Like I don't want anyone to have to feel like they don't belong when they play in online communities.
I mean, going back to your point, when I was thinking about this panel, it was really perplexing to try to figure out like where this was coming from, because I'd expressed this to friends before. I've always felt that gaming, both like tabletop and RPG and video gaming and these conventions, were always supposed to be super inclusive. It was all about like we were all people. It wasn't about our differences. And to start seeing this like sort of surge of people really calling out the differences, it was really perplexing to me because I don't know, that wasn't part of our culture.
We'll go back to this side of the room.
I actually think that was a good segue because I think that part of what's broken down the discussion, where you mentioned earlier what's keeping us from really progressing, is that and we all know there is a section, a significant one of the gamer population that lives on invective. They live just to make other people angry. An example is Gears of War 3 is coming out in a few scant months, and a character that's been typically on the sidelines is now coming to the fore. And there was an interesting discussion. Some of the guys questioned, well, we don't mind, but it doesn't seem to fit the lore based on other things they've already said. How are they going to handle that? It'll be interesting to see. Some women said, well, we think regardless they'll have to find a way because it's a good progression. It was a good discussion. What happened were trolls from both sides came in. You had women saying, well, if you disagree with her coming forward, you're a sexist. You're a pig immediately, all the time, regardless. But then before we could did try to bring reason back to the debate, what happened was the other side came in with the foul language, the threats, the ridiculousness. But what I think I've noticed is that neither side, having the actual discussion, joined up and said, let's get these trolls out and then continue and come to a progression. And my question from that is, do you think it's even somewhat reasonable for game developers to think, you know, I worry about writing a female character because even if I do it well, the sheer amount of trolling and flaming that's going to happen, it's not worth my effort. It takes away from the work I've done. I'd rather just leave it as it is because, you know what, at the end of the day, it's easier. Do you think that occurs?
I actually think this might be a good question for someone who represents a game with fantastic female characters.
Oh, you're calling me out? Thanks. Well, God, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, I lost my train of thought.
Wow, that was great.
How many people here have played Uncharted or Uncharted 2?
Still
Did
not
you have a
enough.
follow-up?
Buying you some time.
I mean,
I need unanimous next year.
you know, like, obviously I don't write the game, so I can't talk about what the exact mindset of our creative director, Amy Hennig, is when she's talking about it and if she's really concerned about it. I think, you know, it's really important for us as an industry to continue to write female characters because that's how we're drawing attention, that's how we're creating these conversations. I mean, we've been, you know, for good or bad, like super fearless about being ultra violent. Why can't we be super fearless about gender?
Yeah. What about any other hot topic issues?
So we have about 15 minutes left, and I want to be sure that everyone gets to say what they have to say. So I think what we'll try to do is do 30-second to a minute question, 30-second to a minute responses, and we'll be good about being succinct. So we'll go to this side of the room.
Hello. First off, I'm a girl who likes girls, who games, and that sucks. Okay? Like it's one thing to look at lightning from Final Fantasy and go damn, and then go that costume is completely impractical and ridiculous, and I don't want to enjoy it. Like I don't want to go look at.
How does she run in that?
Yes, why? Like, character design, you could use work. But in terms of this giant clusterfuck which has come from your awesome, hilarious review, as much as it's horrible that the personal attacks and bullshit like that has come from it, is it at least good that this kind of issue has been raised, or do you feel like it's just going to become another fandom wank which is going to be overtaken by the next one?
You know, I think once you get past all the really like extreme negative responses, I think it spawned a lot of awesome discussions. My regret is that I wish it did that at the time. I was really surprised when that review came out, and I mean there was a lot of flaming on forums and stuff, but I was expecting also other people in the industry to maybe talk to me about it. And everybody was very, very quiet. And I understand it's controversial, but like, I'm so glad I wrote that, because I so want to be here and have these discussions with everyone at PAX, and the amount of people that have come up to me in the past few months and like wanted to talk about it and wanted to talk about other stuff. Fuck yeah. Like, I'm so happy about it.
Okay, thank you.
Hi guys. Trying to think of the best point because I had a bunch of stuff I want to talk about. I'm sorry, I totally blanked on what the studio was that made Other M, but I know it wasn't on Nintendo.
Team Ninja.
And they're mostly known for Dead or Alive Volleyball, so like the pioneers of jiggle physics, basically. So I find it funny that people were sort of like questioning whether or not like their take on the female character was in fact like a legitimate take or not, because looking at the studio's history, they just don't seem to get female characters like at all. So I was just wondering if it seems like the fighting genre in general is like typically bad at that with female
Goes back
characters.
to a point about very impractical outfits.
Yes, exactly. But I don't think the solution to this problem is just studios like trying to make more characters, because Team Ninja is an example of when that goes wrong. I think the solution is like two-pronged, where we get more girls in the gaming industry, and then developers will just become naturally more inclined to make better characters, because artists will be more embarrassed to make embarrassing female characters if they have female lead artists who they have to report to, or lead producers who like wouldn't really appreciate that sort of thing.
Well, the other thing that scares me about that is like, well don't they know any women? It's not just that they have to be in the games industry. Like, don't you know any women?
So I mean, I guess the only thing I have to say is like I'm encouraging all the young girl gamers out there who feel like they're not welcome in this industry. You're needed in this industry because you're the only people who are going to do it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, stood up when we were still talking about the Samus thing. Like, when I first played Metroid, I thought, and found out she was a girl, I was like, oh wow, that's really awesome. And for me, it's hard for me to fathom why anybody might have a problem with that, but besides the thing. With other M, though, like trying to give her a backstory, my feeling was more of that this seemed, like, and you kind of touched on this, that very Japanese. Like, I think it just flashed back to a lot of anime where it gets really pretentious with, like, trying to be deep and philosophical and self-doubt, like, but I'm not doing anything. And so, like, it didn't bother me as much about, like, what they're doing as, like, okay, well, whatever, this is what they're doing with it. And, yeah, I guess I just wanted to throw the perspective out that I don't know if it's as much of a, I mean, it is a, because especially if you look at anime, you know, male characters will go through that same kind of thing, same kind of
So
tired
is your
thing.
question for Abbie kind of, did she examine the cultural context of the developer
Well, yeah, like,
in writing a
like
review?
because you ended up, you mentioned the Japanese thing, but like you, like, and I guess this is part, I guess because I thought it was discussion, like, what do you guys think? Like, how much of that do you really think it is Japanese, or?
I mean, in all
Much of it's
honesty,
just
I
straight
think
gender.
it's, you could probably do a whole nother panel on differences between, you know, Western and Eastern game development, cultural sensitivities, things like that. I interviewed, I went to Japan actually right after I had done the Metroid review, and I interviewed women over there, part of our crew for G4 and stuff, about, you know, what they thought and were a lot of those perceptions accurate. I mean, that there really is like these cultural differences at hand, and they're all like, yeah, there is, and it's tough. But I mean, I'm a Western audience. You're all part of the Western games audience. You know, I don't think it's right to say like, oh yeah, but it's okay because of that. I mean, at the very least, these discussions need to be had. I don't know. It's a really hard question. I thought a lot about it. And I don't even know that I even understand enough still to even start addressing it.
Cool. We'll go to this side of the room now.
First off, I wanted to thank you guys for doing this panel.
Oh, you're welcome.
Personally, in light of recent events involving certain wolves, I almost didn't come to PAX, and I'm glad I'm here because I want to be having this discussion. And so now the shameless plug. I'm with Team Respect. You've seen us handing out these wristbands here. All right, I see some people got them. We're going to be handing them out after this too. And the reason we started this, me and a couple of friends of mine, we wanted to we want to have this discussion, and we think it's really important, and I think it's really important that the way we address these issues is to have women gamers and LGBT gamers and people of color gamers to have their voices heard, to be able to have this discussion. And I think it goes back to the discussion we were having earlier about, you know, we have the 13-year-old boys saying these things. That needs to be balanced by your perspectives, women's perspectives, and everyone's perspectives, and that's why we started this. And yeah, that's what I had to say.
And I think groups like you all go to prove, and the number of people in this room and the number of amazing people I meet at every conference we go to prove that, you know, there are trolls, there are sort of the baddies on the vast wide anonymous internet, but there are actually a lot more of us than there are of them. We'll go to you now.
So I'm going to jump in the Wayback Machine and go back to your comment about how do we balance out the 13-year-olds and everything like that. I think it kind of leads to the whole anonymity issue of where people can just sign up, and I think this is a wonderful place for this conversation because John Gabriel's theory on internet anonymity is normal people plus being anonymous equals complete dickwad. And it's an unfortunate situation. I think we should try to kind of make it more to a point where people are linking it to something that somebody associates and holds value in, for example, like a gamer tag or a PlayStation Network ID, something like that, to help kind of weigh in and rein that in. Because if somebody all of a sudden can't register because their gamer tag is now banned, does a lot to, rein that sort of stuff in and prevent that from happening.
I mean, there definitely are people in place to moderate all of that. And this is the one thing that I do always, is I always file reports.
Yeah.
I always report people when they're involved in inappropriate. Everyone should.
Yeah,
It helps
exactly.
everyone.
Everybody should. So if you hear another gamer talking to somebody, deriding them for being a woman or being gay or something like that, issue another complaint on your behalf against them, because that's offensive. It should be offensive to you as well. I mean, that's why
And if
we're
you're
all
playing
here
with your
today.
friends, make them do it too. It's
Exactly.
really important that we're paying attention to this stuff.
We'll go to this side of the room now.
He sort of said part of what I was going to say, which was, in the old days it used to be acceptable to, hit your wife in public, and that's no longer the case. It used to be unacceptable for a woman to have a job. That's no longer the case. It's considered acceptable. Standards change. And right now, again, because, anonymity is such a big thing on the internet is essentially behind in those standards. But the way we can bring it up to speed is, as with standards in the past, making it impossible or uncomfortable for these people to behave that way. And that requires, looking for people, essentially calling people out on those comments, calling for people to be banned, etc., not just from you people or people who are, on the receiving end of those comments, but from everybody here, from, me as a straight white male, from anybody else here who, just is opposed to this kind of behavior. It has to be a really big collective thing, and every time you, sit back and you're like, well, I'm glad that comment doesn't apply to me, it's terrible, but at least I'm, not on the receiving end, then you're being a part of the problem. And so you have to take that responsibility.
The second half of my thing is, and most of you don't know me personally, but I'm loud and sometimes mean. And my favorite thing is in lobbies when I hear people saying shit they just shouldn't. I go after them. And I roll with the clan when I play games, and we'll all go after them. And I think it's really important to say, hey, get out of the lobby, dude. Nobody wants you here.
And going with what you just mentioned, as we have more women entering the industry and getting into more leadership decision-making roles, you will probably see these changes implemented. Because the reason Uncharted has such strong female leads is the creative director is a woman. And she probably had a lot of creative input into how these characters would be made. So as we see more women enter and take on higher positions of power, we will probably see a lot more strong female characters and better developed characters as well.
I have a question for the panel. Can I ask the panel that I'm on a question?
You're on the panel.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna scoot over a little bit. I wonder if you guys think that this problem actually speaks to how badly we need real characters of both genders, because I don't think you hear a lot of men complaining about it, but because when we're objectified, we're tough and mean and take no guff. I don't know any dudes like dudes in games. No dude.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Me neither.
So I think it's a shame, and I wonder if you think it's this obviously you've got an hour, so what do you do? But this is a question that could sort of extend both ways.
Cool. Before we get to that, I just want to say we have less than 5 minutes left, so after we're done addressing your query, we'll probably go super lightning round and do 15 second, 15 second, 15 second, 15 second, and get everybody in.
Well, I think to your point, sorry. I think our industry is maturing. We have to remember, our industry is 25 years old. Sure. That's a blink of an eye compared to established forms of entertainment and media, and they've all gone through it at some point.